part of the reason for talking about this is uh, the tension people often feel between individual and community, and the argument over whether the individual is sovereign or the community. If we can't take care of the whole community, everybody in it is harmed. And this argument, but with both the sides of which have tremendous arguments to support them. But from a wise democracy perspective, these are two pieces of a larger truth. And the fact is, the sovereignty of an individual only works to the extent that they are aligned with the well-being of the whole. Otherwise, they do degrade the whole, and they and what they love goes down the tubes with everything else, which we see a lot of in Western society at the moment and around the world. On the other hand, you can get, we are solidly supporting the larger community, the larger society, and the individuals' acts within that damage that just need to be suppressed and wiped out. And the sense of both from a, we value individuals and we're all individuals. We know what it's like to be oppressed and suffering, and we don't want to see that happening to anybody, which is the larger justice kind of issue. From a wise democracy perspective, there's also the factor of we're losing those voices, we're losing those perspectives, we're losing pieces of the whole. The more people are silenced, suppressed, imprisoned, killed, whatever, marginalized, pulled out of the conversation of the society, the less we have access to understanding that piece of the puzzle that they see and that they can contribute to solving. So we're interested in how do you put all the pieces together so that the parts are supporting the whole and the whole is supporting the parts, because people can do tremendous service and to enable a whole society, whole community, whole family, whole world function well. And functioning wholes, the whole community can support the individuals in it. An environment, an ecosystem supports the entities within it if it's healthy. So we're looking more at those factors and how do we support those factors so that the whole is supporting the parts and the parts are supporting the whole. And that goes for any match of wholes and parts. There is a whole holistic theory, or the central concept is holons, H-O-L-O-N, and it's noting what's described in the first sentence of this pattern. We are both wholes. We're each whole, a whole in our own right, and we're also part of greater wholes. I am part of a community. I am part of an ecosystem. I am part of a society. I am part of this project to create these patterns. And I am also a whole. I have my own integrity. I've been made of a whole pile of cells. I have a whole pile of psychological voices, and elements in my psyche, etc. So we are all both of these. Everything is, and to look at the world through that lens, through what would be called a holonic perspective, and to sense that there can be synergies all up and down that, from the smallest entities in the universe to the largest entities in the universe. And we're interested in that inquiry and that perspective, looking at how to create a wise democracy, because there's a sense in which the wise democracy involves the wholes and parts seeking synergy and mutual support at all the different levels. So how can we go about doing that? So there's a way in which caring for any whole or any part involves caring for both of them and supporting them in their efforts to support each other. So we will nurture whole communities and environments, and that's whole both in terms of entire and whole both in terms of healthy, wholesome, high integrity, whatever all the other manifestations of wholeness, whole communities and environments that enhance whatever entities are living within them. And we will look at what individuals can do to enhance their communities and environments and try and support that, nurture that, educate people, you know, help people understand that there's a larger community there, a larger environment there that they're part of. Margaret Thatcher is famous for saying there's no such thing as society, there's only individuals. Well, that's a form of blindness. The fact is, there is a society. The whole is greater than the sum of its parts. It's not just a bunch of, you know, marbles in a jar. It's an organism, and there's things that are characteristic of it, including its ability to serve its parts, that are not true of a bunch of totally separate units. So we're looking at the synergies between all these levels and between all these entities and trying to support that. So one of the interesting applications of that in environmentalism and ecology is that there are species who are, they're called indicator species, that within, it's like the spotted owl in the rainforest in the Pacific Northwest of the United States. There are species who, when they are endangered, when they're going extinct, there's fewer and fewer of them, that is an indicator that the larger ecosystem that they are part of is being undermined in some way, that their health reflects the health of the larger system which they're part of. There's an old story about canaries in the mine, that the miners supposedly, I don't know if this is true or not, but it's a widespread story, it's a good metaphor, that miners took canaries down into the mines in their cages, and if the canaries started to get sick or die, that was an indication that in the mine there were gases that were toxic but not able to be perceived yet by the miners. So it was time to get out of the mine, or to get the mine more ventilated or something. So canaries in the mine indicates those people who are those entities whose well-being reflects the well-being of the larger environment within which they are, and that needs to be attended to when they're suffering. So vulnerable populations, you know, when a society is ignoring its sick, its elderly, its young, its minority populations, when it is abusing them or neglecting them, that's an indication that the society is going to be in serious trouble. And so there's a need to expand our sense of concern to embrace not only those individuals, but to embrace the larger social and natural systems that contain them, and how to redesign those systems, redesign those cultures, so that they are naturally taking care of all the entities within them. And having the other people in them, the more mainstream people, paying attention and generating good policy and programs that will do that, because they understand that they are at risk too, you know, unless there is more justice and caring and co-creativity in the whole fabric of the society. Another tool in that is the idea of microcosms, which is another pattern in this pattern language. The microcosm is taking apart one part, which is a group of people who are chosen to reflect the diversity of the larger community or the larger conflict or situation. So you're trying to get a cross section of those types of people who are involved in that you're trying to address, and letting them speak together in ways that the larger community or conflicted situation don't tend to or aren't able to communicate, and have them support them in coming to conclusions that will heal the community or heal the conflict, solve the issue. So that's the relationship between part and whole there is very synergistic. You are extracting this part, this microcosm, from the larger whole, and then you're using the energies and emergent wisdom of that part, that microcosm, to reflect it back out somehow into the whole society or situation, so that it is healed or it's solved. Holistic medicine is another interesting manifestation of this, because instead of just taking one piece, it's like, I have a symptom, so we're going to take that symptom and try and get rid of it. It's like suppressing a problem in the society, or acting as if there's no upset between two people who are upset in a relationship. And instead, it is taking that symptom as a symptom of something larger in the personhood, the biology, the environment, the lifestyle of the person who is having the symptom, and treating that larger thing. That's why it's considered holistic, as it's expanding beyond the symptom as an indicator. It is not the thing you're focused on addressing. And there's many different forms of holistic medicine, but usually they are expanding into the whole person and their life, and addressing that as part of the issue. And there's, in activism, there's a seeing individual problems as indicators of systemic problems. In the feminist movement in the 70s, I don't know how much it's happening now, but in the early feminist movement in the late 60s and 70s, there was a thing called consciousness raising groups, where women would get together, and it wasn't so much a, here, let's us smart activists teach you ignorant women what's going on. It was more, let's share stories about our lives. And in the process of doing that, the women who were part of it would see patterns that they all shared, patterns that they thought were their problem. This was a problem in their relationship. This was a problem in their workplace. And it was a problem that they generated by being inadequate. And what happened as they saw that these patterns are replicated in all their lives is they realized that these were systemic problems. They were all in the same soup. It was the soup that was the problem. Yes, they had roles in it, but there was a larger structure, culture, set of assumptions, behaviors that generated these, and that if they addressed that would shift the whole scene for all of them. And so that was a form of activism to get people to move out of their obsession with their own issues into the larger systemic contextual things that they needed to address. Similarly, with ecological and civic education, making citizens responsible for the whole, having them aware. If you understand what's going on ecologically, you get it that you're embedded in something larger. That it's not a bunch of separate pieces. You aren't, in fact, separate from nature ever. You could be enclosed in a steel box, and you're not separate from nature. You are part of nature inevitably. Even as you breathe, you are generating and using, things, molecules that are involved in whole natural cycles. So getting more sophisticated about that and going, okay, if my well-being is tied to the well-being of these other entities and all their interactions and relationships, and systemic patterns and dynamics, how can I more consciously participate in that so that my well-being and the well-being of all these other things is more taken care of? I can take action that will help the system take care of me, which is the essence of this pattern. And the same for civic education, understanding power dynamics, understanding decision-making structures, understanding the social capital, the kinds of relationships people have or don't have with each other, with people that are like them, people who are different from them. The more you learn about the way the society works, the way your community works, the more you can participate in that, so that it helps you create a community that supports you and everybody like you and unlike you, having a healthy community. And there was a healthy cities movement, which recognized it was a like public health kind of thing, but it was very expansive. It recognized that that healthy, that war is not healthy, pollution is not healthy, poverty is not healthy. I mean, you could have a movement that was for beautiful cities too. That poverty and war and pollution are not beautiful either. So it's a way of looking at the whole, and here's a bunch of sick people, damaged people, and instead of let's treat them all individually, let's look at how we could make a healthy city that generated healthy lives in it. So the synergy here, we are individuals, we are gathering ourselves into groups who are becoming change agents to make systems that can make all of us and all of our peers more healthy. So again, that dynamic of the whole and the part, there's a synergy between the whole and the part. And even activist and caretaker self-care programs. Both activists and caretakers are famed for burnout, and they are trying to support the well-being of others, and in the process using up all their life energy, and that is a sacrificing of the part for the whole, and sometimes that's necessary, but it's not sustainable. So how do you have self-care programs and context communities that support activists and caretakers in their efforts to care for others and the world around them? This would be it's not just activists need to care for yourself. It's like, where are the support groups? Where are the supports to help activists and caretakers continue doing their work on behalf of the whole, on behalf of their neighbors and relatives and whatever. So that's another dynamic. There's lots of examples, but all of them have this characteristic of building more synergy between the larger communities and environments and the members or lives within it.